Okay, so we're here to talk about the coat rack that we're going to be building, and here on my screen you can see that I've drawn it out in Illustrator. I like to see all the parts. It helps me figure out what I need, what I'm going to use, and also what I need to buy. There are some basic principles to keep in mind. Generally speaking, when you're designing, you need to think about what the function of your object or your piece of furniture is. How big, how small, what color, what size, what material. But when you're dealing with something like a coat rack, all those things are important, but function is probably the most important of it. I laid it out in portions of the materials that I'll be using, or each piece. And so I have a darker color up top for the koiway plywood that I'll be using, and then on the bottom I have the eucalyptus plywood that I'll be using. And I also have some holes drawn out that I'll be using for dowels to join the two. And then if you look up here, I have holes drawn for where the actual dowels in my coat hangers will go. And then I have some dowels where I will be putting the screws to mount it to the wall, and then put a plug on top of it, a dowel that'll plug in and then won't be glued, so that I can pop it back out with a screwdriver in the future and take it down if I need to. The more detail you put into it, the better off it is, and the more likely you're going to have everything you need. Okay, so we're here with my material that I'm going to use for this project, for the coat hanger, or the coat rack I should say. Right here, you'll see that this really nice looking, beautiful piece of wood is the wood that I'm going to use for the top piece that the dowels or the actual coat hooks will go into. And then this piece here is the backing piece, and even though it looks fairly dirty, it's actually just surface dirt that'll sand off without any problem. You can see that one side is a little bit more damaged. Like for instance right there, it has quite a bit of damage. So this is definitely the back. When I cut, a lot of times I cut reversed. I actually cut with this side up, because of the way that the blade of the saw goes. If it's going to chip out, it's going to chip out on this piece here and not on the good side. And then on top of that, you'll see that it just has a really pretty grain. You'll also notice that on this piece of plywood here, that it's got a rougher side. This is even though it's dirty, you can see that it's smoother. And then on this side here, it's rougher. And that's because with most plywoods that you'll buy, including cabinet grade, which is a really good grade you should buy for furniture if you're going to use any for furniture, they have one side that is just semi-finished, and like here you'll see that this has a seam in it, so you wouldn't want to use that on the facing side of anything that you're building, your furniture or anything. You'd always want to use this side, which, like I said, once you sand it down, it'll look nice. Now, you'll also see that I'm working on a solid table. I don't work on sawhorses too frequently. And this table, while in really bad shape, somebody gave it to me, I do prefer a solid surface. But that's also why I use this. You'll see this white is actually styrofoam. And the reason I use styrofoam is because I can cut into it with my saws. I can also use a jigsaw on it, and the jigsaw won't break the blade. Which, when you're cutting on sacrificial wood, or if you put pieces of lumber on top of a solid table under this, you always have to be careful not to hit those pieces of wood, because if the jigsaw blade doesn't go all the way through, it'll actually hit the table solid, or it'll hit the sacrificial wood, and then it'll break your blade, and then you either have to put a new blade in, or if you don't have one, you have to go get one. That's another thing. Make sure you have spares of just about everything around, so that you don't have to stop your work to go get something that can really delay you. When you're cutting plywood, your blades are almost always going to dull fairly quickly, just because you're cutting through cross grains and you're cutting through glues and epoxies. So what we're going to start doing now is we're going to get this all set up real quick, and then we're going to talk about how to decide where to cut, and then we're going to start drawing out what we need to do.